Wow. I've been looking forward to this because it seems like it's been weeks since we've been on.
You mean together, or not forcing you to do it by yourself?
Because I'm just, so if you don't know, I'm Ed Parco, one of the hosts, and I'm here with Mohawk Matt Denny. And no, last week we had a little issue with technicals on one day. I had problems with, I want to say, okay, Comcast, and they took out my whole building, and we were fighting with them for a while. Now it's all supposedly fixed, and we'll see. So if I drop, I'll see you next week.
Well, and before our last one on Tuesday, I threw up 5 minutes before we went on. So I was like, I'm out.
And
Go ahead.
with having guests on, it's scheduling and stuff. Sometimes last minute, because with the people we have, they go, "I'm sorry, man, I just got pulled into this meeting. I got pulled into this. It's not, so we run into some things occasionally. So, but not today. Today, our guest is Lester Lumbad. How you doing, Lester?
Everybody, I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure.
Excited to have you.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
I'm excited to hear the story of Lester.
Well,
but first we get into Lester. Let me just say something right here. All right, so it doesn't matter how we find you; we just want you on. So that means even if you run it, so after you're on here, Lester, and you tell your story, and you run into somebody out in town somewhere else who's a vet who wants them to talk about their story about transitioning, have them contact us. We want them on. Matt, I think I told you the story how I met Lester was. I went on Clubhouse for a few minutes. I hadn't been on there in a month, and he was in a room saying, "I want to help vets. I'm a vet, and I want to help him with transitioning out of the military." I thought he'd be perfect on our show to talk, and that's why he's here today.
I love it. Serendipity.
Yeah, absolutely. And hey, before I forget to mention, I'm sure it's obvious, but here in the background, I have my daughter Michaela behind me. So hopefully she's watching cartoons behind me, but the way of the world now, right? So
isn't it always bring your kids to work day?
Pretty much. Yeah. You want to get something done, right?
It's all good. She's welcome. She can jump on it. Awesome. If you get nervous, just have her start talking.
Yeah, because I'm sure she can do a better job than we can.
Oh, yeah. I meant to be the host. I was talking to Ed.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, me and Ed, we'll jump out, and you two can just talk back and forth. There is a gentleman on TikTok who does a podcast with him and his 3-year-old daughter, just back and forth.
Really?
Pretty interesting.
That sounds cool.
But that's not why we're here today. We're here to not only learn what it is you're doing and helping vets, Lester, but let's first learn about Lester. So tell us your story.
Okay. Well, yeah. So I'm an Air Force vet. I joined back in '98 at a pretty young age. And basically, kind of, not to go into too much detail, but I got out in 2005. I worked as an electronic warfare specialist in the Air Force for the, started out my first few years working on the flight line out in Texas. So I worked on the B-1s for that period of time. And then when I left, my last year and a half to 2 years, I worked in the intelligence community over at the National Air and Space Intelligence Center at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, which for me was a really big benefit career-wise and transition-wise, because when I took that position, in all honesty, I took that position because I was trying to find a way out of Texas, and even though it was a great town that I was in, but I was there for a pretty long time. So I was just trying to find an opportunity to go somewhere else. And when I left, Matt was talking about it, before we got on air, but it was an opportunity for me to acquire a TSSCI clearance, which I knew was going to help me transitioning out. And I also knew, actually, I didn't know at that time, but what ended up happening was my wife decided to join the service 6 months before I got out, and for the purpose of attending medical school. And the medical school that she attended was over in Bethesda, Maryland, in the DC area. So that TSSCI helped me with that transition, because it's the Washington DC area. There's a ton of opportunities for that. So that, with a technical background, it just worked out really well. So yeah.
So for people who don't know, what is that designation you were talking about?
TSSCI stands for a top secret sensitive compartmented information. So it just, classified information, basically, allowing you access to those programs and, that type of work. So.
Yeah, that's what important. Like for me, like I'm a janitor. That's why I have it.
Yeah, you got to throw away that classified material. So.
That's what my nephews think. They all think that I work in the Pentagon and I'm a janitor. That's what their parents tell them. He's just a janitor at the Pentagon.
All right,
Everybody
so
needs it, right? So
how long were you in the service?
Yeah.
Just about 7 years.
Because that was a fast story for 7 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
yeah,
you said you didn't want to get into it, but the whole purpose of the show is to get into it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no
Right.
problem. No problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Where'd you go to boot camp?
San Antonio, Texas, Lackland Air Force Base.
Right. I mean, they do have a boot camp in the Air Force, right?
They do, yeah.
It was like a hand stamp. Here you go, welcome.
Yeah, it was a good time. It was shorter than the other branches at that time. I think they made it longer now, but at that time it was 6 weeks. So yeah, but it was good. Learned how to do hospital corners and fold tight little T-shirts and stuff like that. So.
Well, we always joke about other services and stuff internally, but everyone I've always talked to, no matter where you are in life, unless you're like some Olympian or like extreme sports crazy person, any boot camp is going to be a change. It's going to be have its own difficulties. And for me, the Marine Corps side, it was actually more the mental, the knowledge side of the memorization that was harder than the actual physical for me. So it varies. We joke, but it definitely is a challenge at that point of your life. Unless you're like, I don't know, maybe Lester, were you an Olympian before you joined and you're just a hardcore trainer?
No, I was had a little bit of things that could, that helped me out, but I wasn't a super athlete or anything like that. So, but yeah.
Did when you joined, I don't know if you mentioned it, did you get the job that you wanted to? Because I know that doesn't always happen.
Yeah, so that's interesting that you asked that. So that was a big learning experience for me, and that's actually one thing that I talk to a lot of people about as they're coming in. So the way it worked out for me was I knew that I wanted to have some job that was going to build some technical skills for me, but I just didn't know what that was going to entail. So when I took the ASVAB, I just tried to score as well as I could on the electronic or whatever it is, electrical and mechanical sections of it, so I could qualify for those jobs. But then I went in as open electronic or electrical or whatever the field is. And I found they said, okay, well, you can just go into this field open and then you'll get a good job once you get started. In other words, once you're already in basic training. So that's what I did. And then I found out about 4 weeks into basic training what my job was going to be. The only thing was at that time, the job that I took. So in the Air Force, I know in the other branches, they call it the MOS, right? The Air Force calls it the AFSC. So the job that I took for the AFSC that I was assigned was aircraft specific to the B1. So the B1s at that time were only located mainly in 2 different locations, which were Texas and South Dakota. So I was basically locked into one of those 2 locations, and I wound up in Texas. So not only was it not really knowing what my job was actually going to be, but also where that job was going to be located as well. So now, like in hindsight, when I talk to people who are younger and when they're on their way in, that's like a big thing that I try to make sure that they're aware of. Is like if they're going to go and open anything, that they should know, hey, like you could basically wind up doing anything and wind up anywhere doing it, So yeah, so that was a lesson for me. But luckily it worked out. I learned a lot from those jobs. Met a ton of great people there in Texas. People who I'm still friends with now. Very close friends with. So yeah, I'm thankful for the what it did for me. So.
Yeah, we had a couple other people who've been on, and they want to start an advocacy for people signing up for the service to make sure they understand what they're signing up for, and the parents can ask questions, because we know a few people who went in either open, because they were not told properly what that meant. Especially, I mean, in the Navy, if you're told you're going to go in, hey, go in as a boatsman, you'll get to do all the different jobs on the ship, whatever. No, you get to scrape paint. That's your job. Who wants that job? But they sell that. and and depends on when the time of the month to go in and look for jobs. All the good jobs are gone in the first part of the month, and at the end of the month, those are the same jobs that were there at the beginning of the month that nobody wanted. So so we have a couple people we can talk about afterwards if you want to get part of that to help them, because that's part of the show we're trying to put together too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's really important. I mean, that will determine the path for a person, for 4 years at a minimum, obviously. So, it's a big deal.
Well, and I would hope that because we're not in a time of war, or at least active, as we're kind of winding down, and recently, as the president said, pulling out even more of the other countries, that we don't have to hold those recruiters to the same standards, so that we don't have to hey, let's take some time to actually get people where they want. Who knows?
Right.
That's why we're here, and we'll have some people help, because you can't control that.
No, and I thought we just shot off some missiles today.
Yeah, something like that.
We might be in a different war pretty soon here.
Who knows? Who knows? We might get a couple week break. But we do have a comment here from, because we are live, from an active Marine, Master Gunnery Sergeant Matthew Hawley out in Camp Pendleton, California. Just talking about that inter-service rivalry we all love. But he is right. We can make fun of our brothers and sisters, but you can't make fun of us if you're on the outside.
That's right.
Yeah. That's how it is, right. For sure.
Yep.
If you do, you won't like it afterwards.
Yeah. That's right. But yeah, I feel like it was definitely a life changer for me. And one thing that I definitely wanted to make sure I mentioned was that when I did join, a lot of it came from, even though I know this is probably applicable to a lot of people when they join and they're influenced by maybe a family member. Like my dad, he was retired Navy, so he came from a different branch. But one of the things that I've always found, like I've always been proud to say this part of it, but it was also very influential, was that that's actually how he came to the United States. Was he joined the Navy from Subic Bay in the Philippines. Mm-hmm. So that's what brought him to the U.S. and he had a successful career, retired as a Master Chief in the Navy. And so that a year later I joined the service. That's how it went. Ika.
I mean, she's welcome to join.
Does she have anything to say about it herself?
Yeah, she's watching Minions in her headphones, so she doesn't hear anything; she just sees.
So, speaking of your family, your wife is in still. Did I hear that correctly?
No, she's finished up her service commitment just a couple of years ago. Okay. So she finished over at Nellis Air Force Base here in this area.
Okay.
So that's actually what brought us here to Las Vegas was her finishing up. So yeah, it was a really good deal that she got for school. Where I know, Matt, you said you're located out there in the DC area. So her school was also there in DC in Bethesda, and the way it works is you do 4 years of med school and then X number of years of residency, whatever you decide to pursue. And then that total cumulative number of years is the same number of years that you owe back to the service. So there's no financial obligation like how there would be with a normal medical school, which is amazing, right? So we got out of that debt free, but instead you exchange years of service instead. And so that's what she did. And her 7th year of her commitment was spent here in Vegas.
That's great. So you got you got out, and then she joined, but you had kids during the service. That's definitely part of your story that you said so quickly, is having serving has its own challenges. Serving while married has its own challenges. Serving while married with children has its own challenges and rewards.
Yeah.
But
absolutely. So our oldest daughter, she's 13 now, but she's actually the only one of our 4 children who were born here in the U.S. Our other 3 kids were born overseas. So it was challenging, I guess, especially when you throw in the whole component of medical school and residency and the demands that come along with that, plus the service commitment. It was pretty challenging, but it is what it is. We got through it. My 2 sons, they were both born in Japan, so we PCS'd to Yokota Air Base in Tokyo after the East Coast. And then my youngest daughter, Michaela, she was born in the UK at our previous location, which was Lakenheath Air Force Base out there in the UK.
And that's one of the things I've always thought is the benefit of having kids in the service is they get those different experiences wherever you are. And they're like, oh, I was born here. I was born here.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a good reason, at least we're trying to keep it as a reason or ammunition to go back to Japan and the UK, and also the East Coast. We love all those areas. So yeah, it's good stuff. So there was definitely a ton of benefits to, our experience with the military and being able to move around and travel. Like you said, we definitely tried to take advantage of that. Especially in Europe, it was so easy. It was like we just hopped in the car. From England, it was a little bit harder because you got to cross the channel. But once you get into France, it's just wherever you want to go. So yeah, it was good times. It was good times.
That's how I feel recently moving to the East Coast from California. You can drive 9 hours and still be in California. Here I can drive 9 hours and go to 12, 15 different states.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And I say that as Ed sits in California.
That's right. In the middle, pretty much in the middle. So it only takes me 6 hours to get down to one end and another 5 to get to the other end. So. All right. So back to the military. You were in the Air Force. And all right. So a lot of us look back on our time in, and what do you still use today that you learned from the military?
Man, I would say a lot of things really. I mean, there's a lot of things that I applied to my daily family life, really, that I got from the military. Man,
just pick one.
Probably like dealing with like chaotic circumstances or environments. Like I said, we have 4 kids. It can get kind of chaotic, but being able to manage those types of situations. The military, like at least what I got from the military, it was helpful with that. You just kind of find one area to focus on and make it manageable, and then kind of figure it out. So if that makes sense.
No, it does, because a lot of times we ask that question. They say, I keep making my bed with hospital corners, or they say, I show up early, instead of on time, the whole, if they're 15 minutes earlier on time, if you're on time, you're late kind of thing. Now, it's got to be different transitioning out when your wife is still in.
Honestly, it really wasn't at that time. Even before it was even an idea that she was going to join the service, I was already transitioning out, because I started the process probably about 12 to 18 months before my date of separation, just because I knew that that's what I was going to do. And so I just wanted to be prepared. So she didn't even know that she was going to be making that decision yet. And so I was already writing resumes, calling companies, for jobs that I wasn't even eligible to take yet because it was too early. So I felt like when I transitioned out, it went really smoothly. Actually, I took a job as a defense contractor within a week of leaving. So so it went pretty well for me. But then I feel like that was mainly due to just me knowing pretty far in advance that was a move that I was going to make and preparing for it.
So you would recommend most people, we've talked about this many times on the show, because we have Chloe, who's real big on her people, looking a year out, what's your plan, where you're going to go, even if you're going to re-enlist, look at your plan, what you plan on doing. So you looked out even 2 years, is what I'm hearing. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was quite 2 years, but it was a good amount of time. But then it was mainly just because for me, like I knew that my whole first enlistment was actually 6 years. So it wasn't 4, it was 6. So then so I knew, and then I ended up having to extend about 6 months to take that position that I took in Ohio. So the way that I was looking at it, if I didn't make that decision at that point, I'd be sure of it. Then I re-enlisted because I was unsure. Then I would hit the 10 mark, right? And if you hit that mark, then the pressure is on at that point, because a lot of people are like, oh, well, you're already halfway in, you might as well just stay in for 20, But then in my mind, every time that conversation came up, I was like, that's a big chunk of my life that I'm not just trying to throw into the wind and say it's only 10 years, So I didn't even want to put myself in that position. And so if I was going to make the choice, I wanted to be sure of it. So
All right. So your first job was defense contractor. How did you make the leap into what you do now?
Yeah.
And why don't you explain a little bit once you tell us that leap and you get there, what you do now and how you help vets?
Okay. Well, really, like my role as a defense contractor when I left the service is completely unrelated to what I'm doing now. To be completely transparent, but at that time I was working on finishing up an electrical engineering degree when I left Ohio, and it was something that I was very focused on. That was the career that I wanted to pursue, and then I took that position as a systems engineer with Raytheon, and it was what I expected it to be, but then it wasn't. Honestly, like as I got into a few years of working there, one, the pay was actually pretty close to the same, whether or not I completed that degree or not. And then two, I knew that we were going to be leaving the DC area, and there was a lot of uncertainty, with whether or not I was going to be able to continue that career properly. So what ended up happening was after we left DC, we PCS to Japan, and my wife was pregnant with our second child, our son. So then I was like, man, if I go to work, then I'm basically going to work to pay for, bless you, to pay for daycare, right? And the daycare is obviously expensive. Anybody who has kids knows that. So I was like, I'm not going to make that big, commitment just to make money to pay for daycare. So I ended up becoming a stay-at-home dad while we were overseas in Japan and in England for a total of a little over 6 years. So I feel like, everything that I guess I think about as far as the veteran experience, it's definitely inclusive of the entire family, the military spouse, because I've been in that role, and the sacrifices that are involved with being in that role, things that you give up. So anyway, so now what I'm doing is I'm focusing on financial services. So I've been working on building a business in financial services here in Las Vegas for about the last 2.5 years. So like I said, completely unrelated, but yeah, that's what I'm doing. And really one of the main focuses that I'm trying to pay attention to is servicing the transitioning military family and making sure that their military pension is properly protected once they retire. Just by using information that I can, pretty comprehensive information on how to protect their military pension, 100% of it, because when you leave the service, by default, the program that's offered to service members only protects 55%. So we want to make sure that we protect all of it. So,
well, and here's a I don't know if it's a question or a comment, but is it accurate, or I believe, I didn't know this. I didn't know that your TSP could be transferred into something else. I thought you just lost. I thought you just lost it because no one gave me that advice. And then luckily I had someone that showed me, I believe, that you can transfer that, right?
Yeah, you can roll it over into a different vehicle so you can continue to contribute to it. You don't lose it, but you're not able to contribute to it after you've left service because you're no longer employed by the military. So you just hold it, but then it's still subject to loss and other variables. So
well, and I think it's important because a lot of people get out, they don't know. If you're not a finance guy, I mean, a lot of service members get out after one contract. I know the Marine Corps, I think it's 40% or something for the Marine Corps, and it's and so if you get out one contract and you're 22, you're probably not super finance savvy. At least I wasn't at 22. So I appreciate that, sharing that, and I love that what you're doing. Based in that finance world for our listeners here, are there a couple other like quick tips of just things to be aware of, things that people should ask for and make sure they bring up?
Before you answer that, I have a question.
Me.
Yeah, well, no, I'm not stopping you. I want to TSP. Is that like a 401k, 403b? What is a TSP?
Yeah, it's similar. It stands for Thrift Savings Plan. So it's a tax deferred program that you can contribute money to for retirement purposes. It functions in a similar way to 401ks and IRAs, 403bs, et cetera, to where you're limited as to when you can take withdrawals from your contributions and your earnings. and you can't do that until you're typically 59 and a half years old. And if you do, then there's penalties that are usually involved, and then the taxes that you haven't paid because it's a tax deferred vehicle. So yeah.
So your TSP, you can roll over like an IRA, like a rollover when you leave that into another IRA or whatever when you leave.
Yeah.
Is that how it works?
Yeah, correct. That's if you choose to. If the person chooses to roll it over, then they can. So that way they can continue to contribute.
So what do you recommend? So I'm going to get out of here and stop talking, but I want to if I was getting out and I had a TSP, what would you tell me to do?
I would say that if a person has the option based on whoever their employer is to receive a match for what, for their retirement account, then max it out to that match. I just to keep it pretty general, like I never really advise to go over the match just because you could put that money toward other things, but at least meet the match that your employer offers, because that's basically free money, right? If they're offering a 4 or 5% match, then that's pretty much a guaranteed 1-to-1 return on the money that you put in. But then beyond that, it's a question mark. So at that point, you just kind of have to decide what's important to you, how much time you have in your retirement planning picture, right? And see what you can do. One of the things I also try to focus on is taxes, and how the uncertainty of increasing taxes later on in the future should be something that everybody considers, right? Because it's super important, and it's a big benefit, very appealing for people to not pay taxes now, and then you wait until later and it's tax deferred, and when you take the money out, you pay taxes at that point. But then the one thing that you kind of have to at least consider is, what are those taxes going to look like 20, 25, 35 years down the road, and if that's going to work for you,
So another question. So if I roll over my thrift saving plan, I can roll that over into my new employer's 401k or IRA, or I have to roll it in something else, like my own individual.
A lot of times it depends on the plan that's being provided by your employer, but it's always worth checking. It just never hurts to ask.
I'm going to follow up to that. What if you don't roll it over? Does it expire, or can you do it 15 years later?
No, it doesn't expire, but then like I said, if the market takes a hit, and there's a downturn in the market,
Sure.
You can lose money, obviously, just like with anything else, right? Like you can lose money, but it's just sitting there, basically. You're not able to contribute. But at least when you move it into a different vehicle, it's kind of treated sort of as a separate pile of money, but at least you're able to contribute to that same pile of money with another account, if that makes sense. So.
I'm going to say that it makes sense, but that's why we have people like you on the show, because I'm not even sure you're speaking English right now. So that's why that's why you're here.
I'm following you. Don't worry about it. I'm totally following what you're saying.
Okay.
But if somebody has questions, they can reach out to you through Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, everywhere.
Yeah, please do. I'm open to answering any questions that I can. I don't have anything that I charge for in terms of that. So, just set up a Zoom. If anybody has any questions, happy to. So
that's awesome. What are best ways for people to get a hold of you if they're looking to do that?
Like Ed mentioned, the different social media channels. I've been pretty active on LinkedIn lately.
Okay.
I've kind of discovered the value of LinkedIn very late, but so I've been on there, Facebook, and I've also created a new website that's branded specifically for the veteran community and transitioning families, which is called Protecting Wealth for Veterans, the number 4 veterans.com. And folks can I'm still in the process of building it, but I've written a couple of ebooks that I've made accessible on that website, and people can grab that information there and reach out to me if needed. So.
Does that look accurate?
Yes, it does.
There you go. You can reach out right there.
Awesome. Thank you.
100 words a minute typing back there that he does.
Yeah.
Well, Marine Corps taught me to be a writer. I think I can bust out a couple of them. I can't speak, but I can write a little bit. So what are some? I still want to get to my earlier. You hit a couple. My earlier question is what are other finance things that people should be aware of? when they're either when they're transitioning or in general. Because again, talk like you're. Hang on, you cut me off last time, Ed. Talk like you're talking to someone that doesn't know, because I have no idea. My wife still does our
Yeah.
bills.
Well,
I would say,
hold on, one last thing. Add to what he's talking about, but especially if you're retiring out of the military, right? Because that's different than just getting out. Getting out, you might just right.
That's not the question I had, though. I want
I know, but I'm also wanting him.
Out.
I got that, but I also want him to add that to your question when he's done. Okay, before I forget. All right,
there you go.
All right.
Yeah, well, I could probably offer one piece of information that applies to both groups just as much, and it's really the area of protecting your family financially with life insurance, right? The reason why that's important is because when you're leaving the service, retirement or not, right, you go through the whole VA disability claims process, right? And you have to identify anything that you might claim from the VA that impacts your personal insurability with commercial life insurance. The other programs that are offered by default from the military, such as VGLI, I can't remember off the top of my head but yeah, all of the programs that are offered by the military are not based on personal health at that time or health exams. So you're basically allowed to take advantage of those programs as long as you're willing to pay for it. The only thing is that they become very expensive as time goes on. Whereas with having the flexibility to control your own financial protection is something that you can be proactive about and do that before you get out, right, or retire. So
to know.
Yeah, I would say the VA disability process and going through everything that a person is trying to claim, and of course you're trying to max it out, right, and try to claim as many things that have been documented as possible. But most people don't realize that impacts their ability to apply for life insurance, outside of the service, and and that kind of also goes to the SBP program, because that's really what that program is. It's a annuity program that protects the monthly income that's produced from retirement pension, but it only protects 55% at a maximum. So, if rather than paying into that program, you can use private products or private solutions to accomplish the same thing, basically, but have more coverage or more protection from all scenarios. Because after I've looked into it, there's actually a few scenarios where you can actually end up overpaying into the program over, say, a period of 25 years, 20 years. The amount of money that you end up contributing to that program could actually be much more than what is paid out as a benefit to your family beneficiaries if you were to pass away, before your beneficiaries do. So yeah, that's what I would say.
That's important. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And back to the disability, and when you first put in for the disability, when we first get out, you can always go back and have it relooked at later, or even, because I know people who did it 40 years after they got out, they went back and had it looked at and got the disability stuff from the VA. So, it's important to do it, but you can always go back in case you don't get what you need.
So
yeah, definitely.
So I cut you off. Go ahead, Lester.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say,
agreeing.
So we know you enjoyed your service, or you appreciated your service. Why is it that you're so dedicated to keeping helping vets now? Like, besides, country, rah, but why is Lester still helping vets?
Well, I would, like I mentioned it earlier, a lot of it kind of goes back to, not to sound dramatic or anything, but, like the very beginning of my life, like I was born into a military family. My dad came here to this country because of that reason, because of the opportunity from the Navy that he had. He had a successful career, and that provided for our family for my entire childhood, all of my younger years, influenced me to join the military. I got a lot out of that experience. I still carry a lot of those values with me to this day. And then, like I mentioned with my wife, she was able to attend medical school and become a doctor because of the military. So there's a ton of different opportunities. My daughter, a ton of different opportunities that we've benefited from, career-wise, financially, opportunity-wise. That has been because of the military. So we owe a lot to the military. We recognize that. So it's just, now I'm in a position to do that. And actually, one project that I'm really, really excited to be working on right now. And I didn't mention it to Ed the first time that we talked, but it's a nonprofit organization that I'm launching here in Las Vegas. I've gathered a small team of people here locally to where we're going to be launching a Veterans Chamber of Commerce that's going to be affiliated with the U.S. Veterans Chamber of Commerce. So I'm gathering resources and potential sponsors that are going to help me support that project, mainly to, like I said, create resources for the local veteran-owned businesses, but not only the businesses, but also the potential people who are transitioning out of the service and looking for employment with some of those veteran-owned businesses, and create a platform to connect, those people and those opportunities. So,
Your mic's off.
I know, I got it. It's been a while. I had to hit it. So
What'd you have to say?
that's fantastic.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, that's amazing. And we have a mutual compadre who's not a veteran, but his family was in the military and the whole thing, and he does a lot for them in your area. Courtney Buford, and he is a agent in the town, so it could be somebody you guys could get together, and he can possibly help out if you need help with stuff. Okay.
Yeah, I'd love to connect with them. Any help is going to be welcome, because it's definitely, there's going to be a large workload involved, I'm sure. So from what I've been seeing. So
yeah, any of this stuff takes a lot of time. I mean, even this podcast takes a lot of time, and and what you don't realize, but we want to give back, and we want to give back more. So it's about getting people connected, getting more people connected, and then now you have a village to help out. So
yeah, absolutely. And that's like we were talking about earlier, that's one thing that I'm looking at putting in place to help promote this chamber is a podcast. And it's not something that I have really any knowledge about, but I'm trying to learn as much as I can by talking to folks like you, like the both of you, and help me to put it together properly, outsourcing where I need to, so then that way I'm not consuming all of my time doing one thing specifically, but be able to do things properly. So
yeah, best thing to know about a podcast is to start.
Yeah,
it'll all come from there.
And the first few episodes will be really bad, so just understand that.
It's all good.
We're still
I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, I think our hardest learning curve, at least when Ed and I are both on, is that we both run multiple podcasts separately, so it's not stepping on top of each other. Yeah, we've had to learn each other's shoulder. Oh, he's about to talk because his shoulders are moving. Here we go.
Matt's always talking, so I don't have that luxury with him.
Active, accurate. Yep.
Yeah. No, it's just, it's one of those things where we both, I mean, and one thing, if you ever interview somebody who has their own podcast or their own other stuff, they're the worst person to interview because they just talk and never shut up. They don't, because they're so used to talking and getting, and then they just get, and next thing you know, 20 minutes went by and you're like, okay, can you take a breath now? So I can ask you another question.
Yeah, no, it's, I hear you. Yeah, I'm working on trying to put together that guest list now, and mainly just trying to find people to talk about like a lot of what you guys are doing, talking about their military experience and how that worked out for them, and things that they might advise other people to do differently to help other people, and then also like we touched on earlier before we started, but even other areas that aren't related to anything that has to do with entrepreneurship or a chamber of commerce, but just stuff that veterans go through, trauma related issues. And like I was mentioning, through Clubhouse, actually I linked up with a bunch of people who have a lot of knowledge on different areas that are not necessarily traditional, right? But like I think areas like, say, CBD solutions and how that can help veterans who are suffering from trauma related issues or PTSD related issues, or any issues to where they just need some help, but they don't want to be filled up and going the pharmaceutical route for everything. And So, but it's a matter of having educated discussion with the right people, and especially with something like that, right? Removing stigma, so in that way people are open-minded to hearing things. So, but yeah, so that's you guys are inspiring me with what you guys are doing, because I'm trying to do a similar thing to promote what I'm doing.
Hey, we were both where you were, so you're gonna do fantastic. And when you're up and running, there's something I've always wanted to do. I've been trying to do it for work. I have a goal to multi-record podcast that goes on like multiple platforms. So like, hey, welcome to Helping the Brave. Also, welcome to Lester's Lunch Hour or whatever your podcast is called. And so maybe we'll do that one day.
Yeah, that sounds cool. That sounds really
cool. And then we both push it to this, both push it out.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. The more, the better.
I watched a video on StreamYard, the new thing they're doing, and you can put it to multiple Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube channels at the same time. Like if I had a YouTube channel, which I do, it could be on here. Your YouTube channel could be on here. Your Facebook, everything else. It's a new thing that they're coming out with. So this platform is going to grow to help us do more of that. So, but Matt, who was the PTSD people we had on? Remember a couple? That's like 2-3 weeks ago or so.
Not Boots for Truce, but the
PTSD Foundation of something.
Yeah, where you come in
Texas, Houston, Texas. Remember them?
Yeah, our banners are gone for some reason.
I don't know. I don't control that.
We can link you up with them.
Oh, those banners are gone because they were messing with my other stuff. Those banners. Yeah, but basically, there's a place in Houston, Texas, that they're PTSD, and they were on our show a couple of episodes ago. You can find it on our, go to Helping the Brave on Facebook and find them. And they talked about it, and basically, they help a lot of people anywhere, and they're wartime, helping people with PTSD. So it's real big for them. And the problem is you have to be ready to be helped, and that's one of their biggest issues. And sometimes people aren't ready till they're 20 years out of the service and messed up their life for so much. And then finally they're ready to get help, and they're there for that. And they take phone calls from people who aren't PTSD, issues, the other issues, and they help find them go to the right place. They never not help somebody saying, oh, I can't help you, click. They actually help find the right people. And it's amazing what they do.
That's awesome. Yeah. And, there's so many resources out there. It's just a matter of increasing awareness, right? That those resources are there. Because like there's one great organization that I ran into recently. It's called Vets to Industry, and they help people with career transition. But from what I understand, the guy who is the founder of that group, and it's also a nonprofit, he basically went that route just because when he was transitioning to retirement, he realized how unaware so many different, including himself, people were of all the different resources that were available. So he just wanted to compile them into one big encyclopedia kind of deal, and so that way it's easy to find. And so yeah, stuff like that, it's super helpful.
Yeah, because there's on LinkedIn alone, if you start signing up for a couple different ones, next thing you know, there are a ton of them show up underneath your stuff to help you find all the different things. But the problem is there's so many of them. And that's what we're talking about, being the hub to try to help people find that information and get that information out. And that's what our plan is to do. So
that's awesome. Yeah, I definitely support what you guys are doing, and I'll definitely help spread the word, get more people on you guys' your platform.
It goes both ways, because when we have people that need financial help, we're going to send them to you. So
appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, thank you. So Lester, anything else you want to share about you or what you're doing, or say hi to Mom, whatever you want?
Hey, Mom. Hey, Dad. I'm not sure if there's folks that I know who are watching, but if they are, I appreciate you guys getting on. But I just wanted to share what we got going on out here. We're here in Vegas pretty much for the long term. We weren't expecting to, actually. Like I said, we came out here for PCS reasons originally, and then we got out here, and it's just so easy to live out here that there's no reason for us to leave. So everything that we're trying to do on the business side, we're trying to establish it for the long term. So, yep.
Did you see the additional comments there, Matt? From your
I did. Yeah. Someone saying just some more resources they put up there. So they're in the comments there. People want to check them out on LinkedIn. Someone, Francis, mentioned that usajobs.gov is a great resource for people getting out, because you get different vet points when you get out, and we've talked about a little bit on previous episodes, and I have someone who's coming on soon. We're going to go into the deep dive of transitioning from service to government service, and so thanks for sharing those, Francis. Well, Lester, appreciate you coming on and sharing your story, and thanks for keeping up.
Thank you guys.
Oh,
for sure. And just anyone who's in the Las Vegas area, if you have an interest with connecting with the Veterans Chamber of Commerce, please take down my information, and should be up and running in the next couple of weeks, at least the beginning, just the earliest stages of it, but we're working on it. So
there you go. All right, thanks everyone, and Ed, you're awesome.
Thank you. You are too, Matt.
Thanks.
Lester, don't go anywhere until we're done.
Stick around, Lester. Everyone else, have a great day.
And thanks for